Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita, Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Tvameva Vedya Dravinam, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So we're continuing our journey through the third chapter. And Deepa, you said we're now on shloka 27?
Yes.
All right, so would you help us out, please?
Sure. Prakritehe kriyamāṇāni gune karmāni sarvashah ahamkara vimūಢātma kartaham miti manyate. All actions are performed in all cases merely by the qualities in nature or gunas. He whose mind is deluded by egoism thinks I am the doer.
So this is one of the most important verses for us to try to meditate on and think about. Prakriti means nature. It has several layers of meaning in Sanskrit. Cosmically, it means like matter, the stuff out of which the material world is made, Prakriti. It also means nature, like the natural world. You go out into the forest and enjoy the beauty of nature. It also can be someone's inherent qualities. Oh, Jim told another grown or bad joke today. Well, that's just his nature. So we have these layers of meaning of the word nature. So here Krishna says that all beings act. They're impelled helplessly into action by the force of their nature. And what that separates itself out into is guna and karma. Guna are the great qualities of mind. So we talk about tamas, the principle of inactivity, delusion, illusion, where our lower nature expresses itself. Rajas, the quality of activity, of acquiring, achieving, getting, where all the qualities of envy, jealousy, anger, passion, greed, desire, anger, all these things are part of the Rajasic mind. And then Sattva, the non-activity, where the mind is clear and it's at peace, it's quiet, where we have the direct apprehension of our self-nature. So these three gunas not only play in an individual mind, but over a period of our life, or maybe for a whole lifetime, the guna will predominate. And then karma, the force of our past maturing. Nature and nurture. So it's our genetic predispositions, the kind of body, in essence, we chose to come into with, but also the things we've gotten from our family of origin. And if you believe in it, things we brought in from other lifetimes. So this play of guna and karma is what makes us do what we do. Of course, the answer comes up immediately. Well, Jim, don't we have free choice? Well, we certainly experience choice. I choose to do this and I choose not to do that. But why did you choose that? Well, because I wanted to. Why did you want to do that and not the other thing? What is the origin of our desires? And of course, circumstances come up. You know, if one person can play the lottery and nothing happens, they just lose their $5. Another person plays the lottery and they get $600-700 million. Karma. See? So all these things have their play. So what the yogi wants to do with this information, first of all, it helps us deal with the phenomenon of regret. Last weekend, I was sitting down on the patio with one of my neighbors, and he was regretting his life. Oh, I wish I had done that, and I bought this house and it was too much money and I eventually had to let it go, and then that was a bad relationship with that woman, and blah, 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 blah. He was reviewing his life with regret, as if he were, in a sense, totally responsible for all these choices. And what Gita is saying here is we do what we do, impelled by our nature. It's more along the line of, does anybody choose puberty? All of a sudden, these hormones start raging through our bodies, and we have a whole new set of passions and desires that we never had before. Now, we certainly make some choices based on those hormones, but are they really free choices? So here Krishna is saying, essentially, this is going on all the time. So there's no point in regretting the past. We did what we did because we did what we did. We could not have done otherwise. Now, about the future, oh, I have 2 job offers. Should I take job A or should I take job B? Which one should I do? I don't want to make a mistake. We have all this anxiety. And here Krishna is saying, you're going to choose. And it's inevitability. In a sense, that choice was made an eternity ago at the Big Bang. Everything has unfolded. cause and effect sequence. You're going to do what you're going to do. So don't worry about it. The foolish person, as an ego, thinks, I am the doer. I am so responsible for all this, that, and the other thing. Now, does this mean that we shouldn't try to clean up the past when we've hurt or harmed people, make amends? Of course you should, but that's karma too. That's karma as well. So this becomes a major tool for the yogi to be able to let go of regret for the past and worry about the future. One of the great images that the scriptures use, they say, live your life like an actor in a play. So if you're in a Shakespeare play and you're an evil character like Claudius, you're going to commit murder and stuff like that, or Macbeth. Play your role, but you, the actor, are never touched by it. You may play Macbeth 8 shows a week, but you go home and it does not touch you. Likewise, your body, mind, intellect will play its part upon the stage. But you are never touched by it. You are the uninvolved witness of the play of guna and karma. Now, our nature can change through our lives. And oftentimes, it's our response to suffering that can precipitate the change. One of the great examples I have in my life, now many of you know that I'm still very, very involved with people in recovery. So someone, because of their guna and karma, they're a drug addict or an alcoholic, and their life is just a wreck, and they've gone to jails and institutions and are really sick and stuff like that. And then as a response to the suffering, they get sick and tired of being sick and tired. They make this huge change in their lives. Prarabdha, the grace of God, we say. Well, and it's guna and karma. Why does one person recover and get well and another person die a horrible death? Nature. So we also want to have this subtle distinction that this idea of guna and karma doesn't mean that we are doomed to fate. Swamiji used to say, it's karma, not kismet. I'm not sure what kismet means. I think that's a Persian word. But the idea is your karma is the hand we're dealt in life. Maybe you've come into this life with an abusive, dysfunctional family. Maybe you came into this life with a severe physical or emotional disability. Maybe you came into this life in a country where there was crippling poverty and violence. Question is, now what are you going to do about it? Of course, we have our own self-effort, but even the self-effort that we do is our nature, Prakriti. What we don't want to do is live a fatalistic life. So in India and in this country too, in a slightly different structure, there is an erroneous notion. You've been born a Shudra, a servant, so you need to be a servant for the rest of your life. And if you serve me very well, then you'll be able to come back with a better life next time. Or someone who may be a person of color and born in a marginalized community. Well, that's just, you're 3/5 of a human being, I'm superior kind of thing. When it's only really a matter of the privilege, guna and karma. And we can change with our own self-effort, which is guna and karma too. So if you walk outside your home and there's dog poop on the porch, the fool says, oh, karma, the dog pooped on my porch, and you leave it there. No, it is karma that the dog pooped on your porch. Now, for God's sake, clean it up. Baby falls overboard in the rowboat. Oh, that's its karma. Baby fell overboard. God's will. No, jump in and save the baby. But understand that whatever choice you make, doing the best we can with the knowledge we have, we're acting according to our nature, and we can do no other. So there's never, ever any value in regret. There's value in learning from our mistakes, but no value in regret. And there's no need to worry about the choices of the future. You're going to do what you're going to do, and it's all going to work out. It's always all going to work out. Any thoughts on this before we go on? Am I still online?
Yes.
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 All right, next verse.
Tattvavittu mahabaho gunakarma bhagayoho guna guneshu vartanta iti matva na sajjate. But he who knows the truth, O mighty armed, about the divisions of the qualities and their functions, and he who knows that gunas as senses move amidst gunas as objects, is not attached.
So again, he's using this idea of guna and karma. Let's go back to my 5 elements of karma yoga that we've talked about every week. Number 1, act vigorously in the world. 2, how? According to your swadharma, according to your nature. Follow your bliss. Number 3, how? In the yajna spirit, in the spirit of sacrifice, the spirit of service. Dedicate your activity to something greater than your own ego. We've talked a bit about number 4, renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. And tonight we're talking about the 5th element, the renunciation of the sense of agency. I am not the doer. It's guna and karma. It's prakriti. Now, as we meditate more deeply on this idea, we begin to become aware of what I call the Mahamudra. What is a mudra? We usually think of a mudra as a gesture. These are archetypical gestures. You see them in all forms of religious iconography all over the world. They're very similar. Actually, a mudra is something more subtle than just a gesture. It's the body's response to the flow of Shakti, to the flow of energy, or the flow of the Holy Spirit. So, for example, you go to a nightclub and you see the young people dancing, and there's some fella on the dance floor and his hips are going like crazy. Well, that's his mudra, you know. Let's see. If you're interviewing someone at the office, and they walk in and their legs are crossed and their arms are crossed, that's a mudra. They're blocking off their chakras because they're frightened or anxious, you see. So we have these gestures that are responses to energy, which is a form of mind states all the time. So this teaching is the entire creation is the great mudra of the infinite. All of creation is a gesture response to the movement of divine energy. So it's the same energy, the same intelligence that's making your hair grow, that's making your eyelids go up and down, that's making you choose to go to the store, that's spinning galaxies, that causes suns to nova, that moves the ocean's tides. So the deeper understanding of this shloka is to give up this personal idea. I choose. No. In a dualistic approach, you can look at it, this is when we make the decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. We have this profound surrender. Or the great prayer that Jesus did, not my will, but thy will be done. Jesus said, I of myself do no thing. It is the Father within that doeth the work. Trying to explain to us that in fact, the idea that there's an individual doer is illusory. And as we let go of that idea, we find that this thing called a human being, this body, mind, intellect, is used by the divine. When we're caught up in egoism, I am the doer, I am the responsible, we're filled with fear, which to some degree starts to cut us off from the divine energies. You do it too much, you drop dead. So filled with anxiety and fear. That's what makes people sick. And anger. So here, the idea is we surrender. Don't worry. Be happy. That's what the early 20th century sage Meher Baba used to say. Don't worry, be happy. Trying to get us to understand that God's in charge. It's all going to be okay. Any thoughts on this? Take it easy. And the main discipline is to give up regrets for the past and worries about the future. Next verse.
Jim, can I ask a question?
Please.
What if one's natural tendency is to get angry very often?
Well, like I say, your habituated tendency is to get really angry. Now, that's your nature. But remember what I said, your self-effort is also part of your karma. Some people are just angry their whole life and they never change. We've all met them, old people, where they have dementia when they're old and the only thing they don't forget is their resentments. Other people begin to become aware of the spiritual path. That's your karma too. And you begin to see, my anger doesn't serve me. I'm going to work on that character flaw. Then your choice to work on that character flaw, that dosha, is also your karma. You then have subhej, you have auspicious desires. Can you see the paradox there?
That's exactly my point. There is a paradox there.
It is. But the main thing, the deep misunderstanding of this teaching is, well, that's just the way I am. People are just going to have to accept me. That's not necessarily true. Now, some of our tendencies, very hard to change.
But what about accepting negative tendencies in other people? Like, I mean, from the slights that your, ex-boyfriend or ex-partner did with you versus what Hitler did to the world. Like, there's just a full spectrum of negatives that we see in others. Are we to accept that, resist that, fight
Those
against?
are two different things. First of all, we can be of little use to the world if our hearts are not at peace. But one of the things that all of us need to do is embrace our inner Hitler. Have you ever been angry and have you ever been vengeful? I won't point fingers, but I think I've yet to meet a person who hasn't acted from that place. When I do that, chances are I've had a thwarted desire, an unmet expectation, meaning I'm not getting what I want, or I'm hurt, or I'm frightened. So once you figure out your own motivation for your own bad behavior, this gives you a doorway into understanding other people's behavior. It's not excusing it, it's understanding it. Then they stop being evil people and they become wounded people. As soon as you can see them as wounded people and they're acting out of their own prarabdha, their own guna and karma, then you can begin to have some compassion for them. Com pathos, to feel with. And this helps us forgive, which is good for us. But as long as we're hating on other people, then we've probably got a part of our own psyche that we're not willing to admit. One of my favorite little slogans is, you spot it, you got it. You point the finger at one person, there's three more pointing back at you. They, like ourselves, have defects of character, have wounds, and do hurtful things in the world. Hurt people hurt people. Daddy's angry, he hits oldest son hits middle child hits the youngest child kicks the dog. That's what happens, you see. Hurt people hurt people. This doesn't excuse people's bad behavior. Please understand that. If someone is a thief or violent or they hurt people, they should be restrained from acting in that way, because it keeps them from, first of all, screwing up their own karma. It's not about vengeance in that sense. That's not the way our judicial system works. Is this useful?
Yes, certainly.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but almost without exception, if someone else's character defects are upsetting us, there's something in the middle of us that's resonating with it.
Thank you, Jim.
And I should talk about another thing. Karma and guna, you'd think we're just going around in a never-ending circle of misery. But underneath that is another force in the human heart, and that's dharma. Meaning something is always moving us towards the divine. Literally through suffering and happiness. Everybody is always seeking the good. If someone is hurtful and vengeful, why are they doing it? They think it's going to make them feel better. It does. And in the end, that is the force that moves us towards God. So it's not a circle. We're going in a spiral. We're all coming home. Even the most odious of people are coming home. Any other questions?
Hey Jim, this is Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Hey, when one is first sitting with the idea of I acted how I acted because that's everything I had at the time, and that's simply how I act, and getting comfortable with don't worry, be happy, or first being introduced to that, not necessarily being comfortable. Then for me, and for doesn't matter, and I'm sure for many people, then you're also hit with you can let go and relax, but then there's also fear and realizing how little control there actually is. And so can you offer some thoughts on sort of sitting with that feeling and working through that?
Well, why are you afraid?
I think that I often move with a sense of feeling deeply responsible. And if I make a wrong move, I'm going to hurt others.
And that's, first of all, the self in you was never touched. So you can't really do anything that's going to hurt you. That's the deepest illusion. But this idea, this fear that I'm going to make a mistake, I'm going to do it wrong. Usually that's because of the waggy finger of a parent that's taught us perfectionism. You've got to do it right, or you're going to be criticized or maybe even punished. So that's another thing to look at. Do I have some deeply rooted waggy finger from society or a parent?
Right.
In Asian cultures, it's not so much that as it is, I need to look good, save face. What will the neighbors think? What will other people think if I, show up badly? I mean, but every culture has its form of it. And that's stuff you want to be able to let go of.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean we don't make choices from the best understanding and ultimately our intuition that we can. I was just talking with a friend this morning who's decided to move to Portland to take this new job. And, he's leaving his support system here. His family's really close. He's young. He's only 25. It's amazing. And he's got this really, really good job up in Portland. He works in biotech. He's going to be an assistant scientist. First time he's been able to make enough money to have his own apartment. He's a grown-up now. It's really cool. But, he had doubts. Should I take it or should I not take it? It's not as much money if I'd worked in the Bay Area. So you weigh it and then you choose. And then you don't look back. There's no point. Before you can't change the past. And you trust. You trust in this idea. He's not a yogi. But for us, we trust. We're going to do what we're going to do. It's all going to work out. Because in a sense, it's all been written. Is that a little clearer, Katie?
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
And this is a hard one. This is the most subtle part of these 5 elements of karma yoga. Being able to really meditate on this idea of the illusion that I am not the doer. It's the equipment that's doing it. It's very much like there's a computer program. And it's just going to act out according to the way in which it's been programmed. What you want to do is just let the robot go on automatic pilot and watch. And trust. Trust. People who've been working with me for a while know I have this slogan. We live in a benevolent universe that conspires for our well-being if we let it. Beneficent universe, not benevolent. Beneficent. It's good. Really is. Now, that means we have to let go of some of our ideas of what's good and what's bad. Is dying bad? Well, can't be that bad because everybody does it. Maybe it's an adventure. Not bad. So play with this. Meditate on this idea that the ego is just this little piece of vanity. One of the images that I've used in the past, it's like the ego is the drum major in front of a marching band. It doesn't do anything. It's just there in front with the stick going like that. And then at some point, the band just makes a turn and goes down another road, and ego goes, ooh, and then it runs to get in front and go like that again. to pretend that it's leading and choosing and running the show. All prarabdha karma, we say. All right, next verse.
Prakritir guna sammudha sajjante guna karmasu dana kritsna vido manda ankritsna vina vichalayet. Those deluded by the qualities of nature, gunas, are attached to the functions of the qualities. The man of perfect knowledge should not unsettle the foolish who are of imperfect knowledge.
So, this again is another very important verse. We don't want to beat our loved ones over the head with this high non-dual mysticism. It's cruel. Of course, the clearest one, someone comes to you and says, "Oh, my grandmother died. I'm so sad." Oh, Krishna says, "You grieve for whom you should not grieve. The wise grieve neither for the living or the dead. Get over it." You would never say that, even though that's what the scripture says. You don't beat people with it. Always, as yogis, we meet people right where they're at. Remember who you are. The quality of your mind is far more important than anything you can say. The greatest gift you can give people you care for is simply presence. Love them. If they want advice, a suggestion, then we meet them where they are. "Oh, I'm so sorry about your grandmother. That must be very, very hard. Is there anything I can do? Can I bring you some food?" Yogi may say that because the person may not at all have the tools to deal with the higher knowledge. So we really have to be mindful of that. One of the problems that can happen as yogis, if we've been studying this work and we're meditating a lot and we think we're advancing, then the path itself starts to become another ego possession. And then you get involved on Facebook and start to argue with people who have other philosophical beliefs. Or you're at a gathering at a party or something like that, and you get into spiritual data wars. Vedanta never argues with anyone. There's no need. All philosophical systems are fundamentally illusory, including the Vedanta. The only thing that's real is you. So the yogi is able to talk stock portfolios with the person who's interested in that, can talk marketing with the person who's interested in that, can talk politics with the person who's interested in that, can talk about anything. The mind of the yogi, they're very much like a chameleon. They're able to adjust and adapt to what's appropriate for the situation. No need to impress people. And if people in time see the change in you, Jim, you're so much more peaceful than you used to be. You were such an angry dude. What's happened? Well, I've been meditating a lot. When they ask, then you can tell them. Any thoughts about this?
Hey Jim, it's Fang. I've got a question.
Is that Fang?
Yes, hey Jim, how's it going?
I can recognize your voice now.
Aha, it's great. My question is this: if somebody does notice and they ask, for example, what's going on in your life? Obviously, I think meditation is something that's really widely accepted, and maybe you say, I've got a really great Vedanta teacher, but then do you go more than that? Like, how? Because I find it, I suppose I'm like really honest, and I'm kind of feeling I don't. Like, how much do you share if somebody does ask you what's going on? Like, to what depth do you share? You just kind of sense out what's appropriate, I guess.
You have to trust your intuition.
Okay.
But the principle of this verse is we do not unsettle the minds of the ignorant. That's cruel. If they genuinely ask, you can have a pat answer. One of the ones I use, yes, I meditate quite a bit. I have a deep spiritual program. It's because I need it more than the next guy. That's what I tell people. I use self-deprecating humor a lot.
Thanks, Jim. That's really helpful.
But I don't parade the stuff to other people. The vast majority of my friends outside the Sangha have no idea what I do. Well, you do something with meditation or something, and what's that thing you teach? Vendetta? I get that all the time. No, it's not vendetta. But when someone is sincere and genuine, then of course we share. Deepa, would you be so kind? Read that verse again so people can really internalize it.
Of course. Just a sec.
Just the English.
Yeah. Those deluded by the qualities of nature, gunas, are attached to the functions of the qualities. The man of perfect knowledge should not unsettle the foolish who are of imperfect knowledge.
Yes. So the vast majority of people are attached to the outcome of the world. They're angry about politics. They're worried about economics. They're all aflutter about romance or despondent about the lack thereof. And you listen and you meet them where they are. You don't beat them over the head with spiritual platitudes. Any other questions on this? Next one.
मयि सर्वाणि कर्माणि सन्न्यस्याध्यात्मचेतसा निराशीर्निर्ममो भूत्वा युध्यस्व विगतज्वरः. Renouncing all actions in me, with the mind centered on the self, free from hope and egoism or ownership, free from mental fever, you do fight.
Yes. So here, taking the last part first, when Krishna says to Arjuna, fight, that means, of course, remember, Arjuna's Kshatriya, and his duty, his Swadharma, is to fight this righteous war because the other guys are adharma. They are against what's righteous. So now let's take each one of these ideas because they're instructions for you and me. So the first thing is we act according to our duty in the world. That's the first thing. That's how he ends the verse. Now, what's the first idea again, Deepa?
Renouncing all actions in me.
Yes. So we've talked about that. Ideally, you can say, okay, it is Krishna who is the agent. It's Krishna or God that's working through me. If that's difficult, you can renounce all these actions in the Lord this way. You have a new employer. You're working not for PG&E or for Google or Facebook. You're working for God. Get up in the morning. Good morning, God. This is Jim reporting for duty. My friend Harry shared a prayer from a man named Father Michael Judge. He was the Franciscan priest. He was the chaplain to the New York City Fire Department. And he was the first registered death at 9/11. And his prayer goes like this: God, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. I just love that prayer. God, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. It's still this same idea of renouncing all our actions, dedicating them, giving them all to God. I'm working for you today, Lord. How can I serve you? And how can I serve your holy people? Next idea.
With the mind centered on the self.
Yes. So always keeping the mind intensely introverted, reveling in your own self nature, not letting it extrovert into the world with our attachment to people, places, things, and conditions. Then we can begin to see the world with a kind of compassionate detachment. We're not all caught up in I want this, I want approval there, or I can't stand that, or I hate that person. Remembering who we are. It's interesting, if you have any Sufi friends, when they go do a ritual, it's oftentimes called a zikr. It's also a Hebrew word. Who can tell me what zikr means? Anybody know?
Zikur is to remember.
What?
Zikur?
Yeah, it means to remember.
To remember.
Yes. So you're supposed to remember God, and God remembers us. But as yogis, remember who you are. I am not the body. I am not the personality. I am ever that witnessing consciousness. Who is that who said that? I couldn't tell.
Hey, my name is Natalie.
Oh, and are you Jewish, Natalie?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
Israeli.
Hello.
Nice to meet you. Shalom.
That's great. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank
All right.
you. You're amazing. You're amazing.
You're
Thank you.
amazing too. Okay. So that's what we are to do. That's what we are to do. So keeping our minds centered in the self, because the self is that place where God and the human being are one. Next idea, Deepa.
Free from hope and egoism or
Yes.
ownership.
So the kind of hope that he's talking about here is the I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, it may be crappy now, but if I change my circumstances, I get the new boyfriend or the new girlfriend or the better job or the fancier house, or get rid of the boyfriend or the girlfriend, or get rid of the job. I hope I'll feel better. Get rid of the idea that externals are what cause my happiness. Yoga Vasishta says, why try to cover the world in leather when you can wear shoes? Let go. And egoism, letting go of this idea that I am the doer. That's all of the ideas, isn't it?
Free from mental fever.
Forgot one. Free from mental fever. What causes my mental fever? Anxiety for the future, regret for the past, and concern in the present. I'm not going to get what I want. Let it go. Let it go. All right, one more.
So verse 31. Ye me matamidam nitya manutishthanti manava shraddhavanto na suyanto mutyante topi karmabhi. Those men who constantly practice this teaching of mine, full of faith and without cavilling, they too are freed from actions. Cavilling, sorry, not cavilling, cavilling.
Means complaining. Cavilling means complaining. So those people, it's not just the men, it's everybody, who are full of shraddha, full of faith. Meaning I've reasoned out in my mind that this teaching makes sense and I'm willing to commit to this way of life. And who don't complain, meaning all of us will get our allotted dose of pinpricks in life. Shit happens. The yogi wants to give up the victim mentality. I'm unhappy because the boss is a jerk. I'm unhappy because my boyfriend is a jerk. I'm poor because the economy sucks. This is what's wrong. That's what's wrong. And all these things out there. We live in a terrible world. And I'm unhappy because of externals. Listen very carefully. Bad things happen to good people. Socrates was once asked what vexed him the most, and he thought for a moment, and his answer was the prosperity of the wicked. Sometimes really, really negative, bad people seem to do well in the world. But since we're riffing on Hebrew scripture, one of the things that God says is, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. What does that mean? That means nobody really gets away with anything. That includes you and me. Because of the law of karma. Whatever energy you put out, it will return to you in kind. Maybe not in this life, but in the next, perhaps. So we don't need to worry about it. So if something terrible happens to me, my car gets broken into, the foolish person says, oh, those horrible people, we should crack down on them. The yogi says, well, I may not have a memory of it, but perhaps I stole something, either earlier in this life and another life. In some sense, it's coming back to me. The energy I put out, largely in ignorance. What am I going to do about it? Well, chances are you're probably better off if you don't steal. It's funny how we don't get these connections. I'm thinking of a person who thought they were just so smart because they went to Costco and they got like a temporary membership for $50. Then they canceled it and they got the $50 back. And then they did this over and over again. So they were able to shop at Costco for a while without paying the $50 membership. And they thought they were being so smart. Well, actually, that's called stealing. And then they were so outraged when Amazon delivered packages to their apartment and somebody stole their packages from their front porch. So the yogi lives an ethical life because why make life more painful than it need be? So we have what I call the point of power. The point of power is how we choose to respond to negative circumstances rather than reacting with a need for redress or revenge. Technical term for this practice is called titiksha, forbearance. But this is what Krishna's alluding to in this verse. And he says, if you practice this karma yoga with these 5 elements, you will exhaust your vasana without creating new ones. Meaning those unconscious impressions that cloud our experience of the self. This is how we use our actions to lead us towards liberation. That's the whole point of this chapter. All right, we'll stop there for the evening, and we have a few minutes left for questions. Anybody have questions, comments, thoughts?
Jim, I know you explained the idea, but I want to ask again, just so I understand better. The person who steals from Costco, or it doesn't matter who, what they steal from, isn't that also their guna and prarabdha and karma?
Absolutely. And the fool doesn't see the connection. So when they finally get arrested at some point, say for shoplifting, they're going to say, oh, bad luck, I got caught. But the yogi, that's also their guna and karma. They've been given this information. They can't do it in ignorance anymore. So please understand, this doesn't mean we are passive to life. And it doesn't mean we don't make choices based on our best understanding. But what it invites us to do is when we look to the past, there's no point in regretting because you did what you did with the knowledge that you had. You did the best you could, and you can't change it. It was guna and karma. And in terms of the future, you make a choice with the best knowledge and information, intuition that you have. But once you make the choice, don't worry about it. It's all going to work out. Does that make it a little clearer, Deepa?
Yes. So they should choose. So if what I'm hearing is they should choose better in the future, the more they know, the better they can choose. And
absolutely. Isn't that what's happened in your life?
Yeah. And also looking back, don't self-judge or judge others, right?
But, okay, let's say someone has had a really, really painful relationship. And then all of a sudden, somebody asks them out on a date. And they say, oh, I'm so frightened. You know, I don't want to go through what I went through in the past. And what Krishna is saying is, well, you don't know. See what happens. You can always stop, say no at any point. So it invites us not to be afraid of our choices either. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, and it could be so mundane. I cannot tell you. I have a friend who's a real estate salesman. How many times people get right up to the edge of buying a house, and it's really a good idea for them on all sorts of levels. And then they freak out. Or they buy the house and they sign the papers and they call up, we've changed our minds, we want out of the deal, you know. Because they're so filled with fear. They're afraid they've made the wrong choice. Now, it's interesting, this same fella making all the right choices in his life, investing in property, stuff like that, turning it over, and he was leveraged. And in 2008 and 9, he ended up losing about $300,000, lost all his properties, essentially had to start over again. He ended up having to do a bankruptcy. Oops. But no point in looking back. Oh, I should have done this. I shouldn't have done that. Or that was stupid, blah, 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 blah. You know, you might want to analyze it to see if there's things you could do better in the future. But there's no point in beating ourselves up or regretting the past. It doesn't do anything. He did what he did. So there's real world practical application for this. Is that helpful?
Yes.
And it's okay to spend time not accepting this part of the teaching lock, stock, and barrel overnight. You can take it in little pieces. Don't believe me. Go back, reread these verses, look at Swamiji's commentary. Put it on the shelf. Let it just percolate in your unconscious for a while. Like I say, of those 5 elements, this renunciation of the sense of agency, I am not the doer. I am just the uninvolved witness. What is it that's doing the doing? The force of the past and the qualities of mind as it interacts with the society, because we don't have karma in a vacuum. All right, what number did we stop at, Deepa?
30,
33?
no, we finished 31.
31. Okay, so we'll do 32 starting next week. Okay, let's meditate. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Om. Thank you all. And thank you, Deepa, for chanting and for putting up the shlokas.
Thank you.